You mentioned the shifting explanations and rationales that are coming out of the White House. Yesterday, Marco Rubio pretty explicitly said that the timing of the operation was based on planning by Israel. He basically said, we knew that the Israelis were going to strike Iran, which meant Iran would strike back against our bases in the region, which means the US had to preempt the response, I guess, and bomb the Iranians first. What did you make of that explanation? And then a lot of Democrats have looked at the Netanyahu regime and felt like, you know what, we don't like the trajectory he's on. It's time to rethink the U.S. relationship with Israel, especially military support.
Well,
where do you stand?
Making that easy right now. Let's talk about that. So the first rationale was we've got to make sure that they're not armed a nuclear arm. But we, of course, that rationale I thought was resolved, meaning we had completely obliterated their sites. And so that was the first rationale. Then, okay, so well, maybe that wasn't the case, but now it's about their missiles. And they can perhaps hit the United States. And then you realize, wait, that's a decade plus away, if that. So that's BS. Okay, then it's about their militias. It's about their proxy. Then it's about their Navy. And then it's in response to the likelihood that that Israel was going to, so we had to go in ourselves. And then you hear Hexet, God help us, his rationale or non-rationale. So this is Keystone Cops, but playing with real lives, with our reputation. They've already, so you see what's happened to our allies, you see what's happened in the NATO alliance in the context of truth and trust and the conversations that all of our allies are having now with India and with China as they're strengthening those relationships because they're starting to decouple or de-risk their relationship with the United States. But the issue of Bibi is interesting because he's got his own domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. He's got an election coming up. He's potentially on the ropes. He's got folks, the hard line, that want to annex the West Bank. Freeman and others are talking about it appropriately, sort of an apartheid state. They couldn't even, we're talking about regime change. For 2 years, they haven't even been able to solve the Hamas question in Israel. So this is, I want to be careful here, but in so many ways, that influence in the context of the conversation of where Trump ultimately landed on this is pretty damn self-evident. And so Rubio may have been saying something else in the context of what he ultimately said in terms of being sort of pulled into some of these things. But I will say this, didn't surprise me in this context. I don't know if it was Napoleon or whoever said about a sword, the only thing you can't use a sword for is sitting on it. And when you bring 2 aircraft carriers out there and you assemble the kind of military force that Trump did over the last few weeks, it didn't surprise me ultimately they moved that direction.
Do you think, looking down the road, that the United States should consider maybe, rethinking our military support for Israel?
It breaks my heart because the current leadership in Israel is walking us down that path, where I don't think you have a choice but that consideration. To say this is in America's interest at a time when affordability is at crisis levels, where you had an administration who literally got elected saying this is exactly the opposite of what they would ever consider doing. The fact that we are in this now regional war, all these proxies, the fact that we, and all the grift and the corruption, that's also marks a huge part of this, and that's a real conversation we need to have, this board of peace. And the peace that the Witkoff family is getting, and the peace that Kushner is getting, and the peace that Trump Jr. is getting. You just got to reconsider the whole thing. You just have to. And, that's a stubborn place. I didn't expect to be in that place. A few years ago, let alone, where we are today. And it's accelerating in real time in a deeply, deeply alarming way. And it's just one of many alarm bells that are ringing, and we can get it to democracy, our republic. We can get into what's happening with the secret police, the bovino-ification of our streets, and what's happening in this country with democracy. It's a precious and perilous time, but it also has parallels, and some of those are reflected in some of the storytelling in the book, and some of the revelations about my own family's relationship to the Red Scare, to Oppenheimer, to McCarthy and McCarthyism. And some of those currents, some of those tenets echo today in many respects.
One more newsy question. I'll connect it to the book. How about that? In the book,